the banner stuff.
Yeah. So this afternoon, my wife calls me at like 5:15 on the way home, and she's like, "Hey, so what time do you go on to the computer and play your game stuff?" And I'm like,
always.
I do it all the time. I said, but tonight it's 8:00, and she goes, "Oh, cool. So you can take me up to the bar so I can go to the trivia night." I'm like, "Oh, what is going on there?"
Everywhere across the country, trivia nights exist on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So she's like, you can take me up there, and then one of her friends is gonna bring her home, and I'm like, all right, cool. So don't get too drunk. And she goes, "Well, you're not gonna be there, so it doesn't matter." I'm like, what?
Wow.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, so
I don't know if it is amazing. She has go either way.
No, she has something to do on Wednesday nights now and not sit there and bug me. What are you guys up to?
Dude, like today I was walking my dog, and I walk him about 3 miles or so every day, and it was kind of crazy, man. It's like 50 degrees here, and I'm pretty sure I almost lost my fingers to frostbite. Like it was pretty nuts. I don't know, man. I hate this cold weather.
I've unfortunately still been freaking studying all day because the fourth of my 4 exams that was supposed to be on December 22nd got moved because we had a snow out. So it's now actually going to be this Saturday, which means that I now have to relearn things that I learned 3 weeks ago. So yeah, so we've just been grinding on Google Docs. Pretty boring life.
So you have snow days even in college, huh? That's awesome.
So it's honestly such a Vancouver lameness. Like where I grew up was in Winnipeg. Oh,
what's up?
Where I grew up was in. Sorry, I like knocked my camera and it like dislodged it.
Yeah. I wasn't looking at that.
When where I grew up in Winnipeg, we grew accustomed to snow. Like it was always cold. It was always snowy, and so we didn't have snow days. It snowed. Okay. Leave earlier, right? And then BC, all of a sudden, people have lost their minds. They don't understand how to deal with anything. So it snows like 5 centimeters. People have a hissy fit. Your exam gets canceled. I'm not in favor of it, but it'll be what it'll be.
That's right. Well, you guys ready to kick the show off? Let's do this.
This is Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Shane Manila, Jakob Sanderson, and Chase Vernon.
There it is.
Boop, boop, boop,
Yeah,
boop,
that's
I can do that.
That's exactly what Chase has been waiting for. Is just being able to harmonize with Jacob. I knew it. Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Intervention. Actually, it's now Dynasty Intervention.
Woo, Dynasty season.
We do not have any Shane tonight, which is, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's a good thing for us.
Yeah, I had to make sure to be in my kids' basketball game.
That's right. I know it's a good thing for us. It's probably a bad thing for him because this is like his time of the year to shine, with the Dynasty stuff and all that. But Jacob, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good, man. I'm happy to be here. Happy to get back into Dynasty season. Yeah, a lot of changes already in the last couple of days. I'm excited for the playoffs. So yeah, always excited to be talking to you guys. Right
on. Chase, how's everything going up there in the Great White North?
Dude, it's crazy, man. Here in Virginia Beach, it's been nuts. No, it's crazy, man, because, as most people know, I work with Trophy Smack, and this is the busiest time of the year for Trophy Smack. And, for the show, Fantasy Intervention, we're taking a little bit of a turn, and Gator J is actually be hosting a lot of these shows moving forward. But if you guys want to support Gator J, if you guys want to support Fantasy Intervention, go check out youtube.com/Fantasy Intervention. And if you guys want to purchase a trophy or a championship belt, that's right. We got trophies, championship belts like you guys can see behind me. Use promo code ADVICE. That's right. Promo code ADVICE to get a free ring. That's a free bling ring or free stunner ring along with the purchase of a trophy or a belt. go check it out over there at fantasy or at trophysmack.com. Promo code advice.
Yeah, I'm gonna clip that later, and that's just gonna be on the brand, so I can just pop that in every time I want to do a infomercial right there, Chase. I greatly appreciate that. Look, we're gonna get into some coaching changes over this past few days, a week or so. But playoffs are finally set. We got Seattle going to San Francisco, the Chargers going to Jacksonville, Miami going to Buffalo. There's your AFC side, or I'm sorry, your Saturday games, right? And then Miami, Buffalo, New York Giants, Minnesota, Baltimore, Cincinnati on Sunday, and then Dallas at Tampa on Monday. I don't understand why they did the Monday game with Dallas and Tampa, other than to just
so that
get
they can
Mike
have more
McCarthy
games on
TV
more days.
there.
And
Right.
oh, they did that on Monday. Oh, that's
right.
That's because
that
they need to have a
game.
4-5 game on a Monday because they want to have the playoff schedule set the next week.
Okay.
And the 4-5 games are the only ones that don't impact who plays who. So they have to have a 4-5 on the Monday. So it was either going to be that one or the Chargers and Jaguars, which is a primetime game anyway on the Saturday.
I think it was the get Tom Brady on primetime one more time.
Oh, he was going to be primetime either way for sure.
That's right.
Which day? Who knows? But he was going to be on primetime.
That's right.
What else do you want? Anthony Brown in primetime? Because we're getting that too.
Yeah, that would have been rough. That would have been
Skylar
rough.
Thompson.
Skylar
It's
Thompson.
happening, dude.
Yeah.
We're getting Anthony Brown in primetime.
Well, we gotta, coaches that didn't get the axe or even retire. Two big ones. Matt Canada, which I think everybody thought as the OC in Pittsburgh was going to be gone. It looked like he got
named after my country.
Yeah, it looks like he got the vote of approval by Pittsburgh, and then Bill Belichick decides he's coming back for at least one more year. Any thoughts on either one of those, Chase?
I got a question, and I'll ask you guys both this. Like, what would the Patriots have done if Bill Belichick didn't come back? Because there's no way they would have ran with anybody to be the head coach of this team. I mean,
Matt
the defense
Patricia,
wasn't
man.
great.
Matt
Patricia was terrible. Like, he was, supposed to. I don't even know how the offense ended up going this past year and how it ended up winding up. But Matt Patricia wasn't good, or whoever was running the offense wasn't good. The defense wasn't good. Mac Jones took a massive step back. The only one that actually took a step forward was Ramondre Stevenson, which I think we all kind of expected to an extent. So, I mean, I'm more so curious where you guys think the Patriots would have gone if Bill Belichick retired.
Wow, that's such a hard question because he's been there for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear from the chat too. Like, where do you guys think he would have gone? Because honestly, I feel like the regime might have just said, "Hey, let's just fold everything in, and let's just start from scratch, and let's get Mac Jones, a quarterback guru, and try to build from there." I mean, that's not very Patriots way, but it felt like that might have been the right way or the way I would have gone.
Right.
Yeah, I think they got to get Bill's washed up ass out of there. Personally, it's over for me with Bill. They got that game. I mean, he can still clearly knows how to get secondary results out of pretty much anybody. That's the one thing that he can do. Every year they lose their corners, they get in new guys, and they end up being an above league average secondary. So I'll give him that. Other than that, I'm not really seeing it anymore. I mean, this team has been entirely average since Tom Brady left. The things that he used to be one of the best at, right? He used to be a team that handled clock management, going forward on fourth downs better than almost anybody. That's gone now. I don't know if that's come with old age. I don't know if that's other teams just passing him by, whatever it is, but he's turned into a massive coward. And I think it's time for him to hang it up. I'm over Bill Belichick.
He's just stuck in his ways, man. He's that old geezer that's like, I'm not changing for nobody. It's my way or the highway. Get off my lawn. I've done this for however many years. I'm going to continue doing it my way. So that's just the way I see Bill Belichick. And, if he doesn't have Tom Brady, then he is a mediocre, or at least has a mediocre team. But let's dive into the actual coaches that were fired and what's it going to mean for our fantasy teams, our fantasy players that we currently have, values and that sort of thing, if we're going to look to trade on or trade off of them. So first, let's go to the obvious one. We all thought this was going to happen for weeks now. Cliff Kingsbury is out in Arizona. He just signed a massive extension this offseason. He ends his first head coaching tenure, 28, 37, and 1 across 4 seasons. Cardinals finished last in the NFC 4-13 this year, and position them with the number 3 overall pick in the NFL draft. And now reports are coming out that Nuke wants out. He's still got 2 years, $34 million left on his deal, and is likely to ask for a new deal. So I know Kyler is still coming off the injury. Probably won't start in 23, but maybe towards the middle. What kind of what does it mean for players, the value of players like a Kyler Murray, like a Marquise Brown? Are you in on either of them right now?
I think it really has to break down to what happens with Sean Payton before I start trying to figure out what the values could end up being. But I still think that regardless, you're going to see an increased value for Kyler Murray. You can see an increased value for Marquise Brown to an extent. DeAndre Hopkins might end up moving on, so we have to see what happens. But I mean, there can't be a worse situation than running with Cliff Kingsbury. Now, what I want to see, I would love to see Sean Payton there. That'd be great. But who he brings on offensive coordinator, might make me a little bit more concerned. He's still going to be running the offense. It's going to be his offense, and he'll be fine. He has loved Kyler Murray since the draft days. They brought up Kyler Murray as hey, could this be a potential replacement? He's like, I would love for Kyler Murray. He pretty much got rock hard on camera.
So did Cliff Kingsbury, though.
Yeah, well, of course. Cliff Kingsbury doesn't know how to operate an offense.
Cliff Kingsbury said he would draft him with the 101 if he had the option.
Yeah, and he did.
By the way, he did.
But it's a different story. You have a great offensive coordinator with Sean Payton, of course, versus Cliff Kingsbury, who we all know the story with that. But if Sean Payton, so with Sean Payton, right, Denver Broncos want him. Denver Broncos don't have a lot of draft capital to be able to go acquire him, and I really don't know what they would be able to give without completely depleting either the offensive or defensive side of the ball in order to get Sean Payton.
They did get Miami's first with Bradley Chubb trade, so they do have the first.
I mean, I just think this whole thing is silly. The idea that a team that is in bad enough shape that they just fired their head coach is going to want to part with a first-round pick to get Sean Payton, to me, is asinine. I mean, maybe it'll happen. I think if it does happen, that team is stupid. Now, that's not to say Sean Payton isn't a good coach. He's absolutely a good coach. But to me, if you're in a down bad spot as a franchise, you just need to hope that you get the right coach. And then you need all the resources that you can put to get around him. I would not be expending a first-round pick to try and secure the floor of my next head coach.
Well,
you have a lot to fix.
We're not organizations, right? They do stuff that we disagree with all the time. Now, with that being said, right, I don't see the Denver Broncos actually going and acquiring that, especially after acquiring Russell Wilson. I see it more so happening with the Cardinals, but the team that I actually see making a move, it just depends if Sean Payton actually wants to go there, is the Texans. Right, because the Texans have 2 first-round picks. They have plenty of assets. They have plenty of cap room to go sign stars. If Sean Payton wants to go in where there's no general manager, there's no coach, and there's plenty of
there's a GM there. I mean, I guess he could get fired later, but they have not moved on from Nick.
They have not as of yet.
Okay, then it must have just been Arizona.
There's still a possibility that could happen. There was supposed to be some sort of meeting conference tonight with them. But so let me ask it this way. Are you buying either one of them? Because I still think that Kyler Murray is a QB1. When he gets back, even if it's a back end QB1, would you be looking to buy Kyler Murray, a Marquise Brown?
I'm buying Kyler absolutely because he was a back end QB1 this year,
right?
In an injured, dysfunctional offense, and he played pretty terribly. I mean, he played the worst that he'd played since his rookie season. He was still putting up fantasy points, the back end QB1 range. So he's a locked in fantasy option, and you're getting a discount on him based on the injury, based on him potentially not being ready for the start of the season. So he's a massive buy. And I mean, Marquise Brown, I think, is probably a buy as well, in the sense you look at what he was doing, prior to DeAndre Hopkins coming back from suspension and prior to him getting injured. He was a wide receiver 1 in points per game. We'll see if that's something that he can get back to, but that's definitely within his range of outcomes for Marquise Brown. If this referring to Kyler, he's worth a lot more than that to me. I give plenty more than the 103 rookie pick for Kyler Murray. I give the 101 rookie pick for Kyler Murray.
Really? 2 quarterback leagues, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
I just want to make sure we mention that. That's all. I just want to make sure we mention that.
That's all Jacob plays is in super flex leagues. He doesn't like one QB. He's like, what's a waste of time? We got a super flex spot. Let's put a quarterback there.
That's interesting to me because I mean, the Arizona Cardinals have been known for making bad decisions, bad personnel decisions, bad coaching decisions. Like they haven't had a good coach, a good personnel decision maker, a good GM there in years. So like you are taking the ultimate lottery shot that the Cardinals finally make the right choice and they can bring somebody in that can actually manage it. Meanwhile, like you could end up seeing a guy like, Stroud. That sucks for the Texans, obviously, but maybe Bryce Young. For me, I don't know that I would trade the 101 because I think once we get closer to the draft, I think the 101 will increase and you'll be able to get more for that.
I'll try and get extra on top for sure. But I mean, if push came to shove, like you're talking about a rushing quarterback who's been a QB1 every single year that he's played in fantasy football. To me, that's more valuable than any running back. I mean, he'd be a guy that I'd be targeting easily in a super flex league, right along. When he's healthy, there's really not a massive gap between him and Lamar and Hurts in terms of if you zoom out, take the overall picture. So it's just a health issue for me.
Well, they did say that he was going to have input on the next head coach. I kind of find that kind of funny, but he's going to have input on the next coach. And so I want to move on to the next thing. I want to hit this real quick. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but Cliff Kingsbury did start his professional career in New England. If he were to get back into, he's millions and millions of dollars. He's going to get paid for the next 6 or 7 years or whatever it is till 27 with Arizona. But if he becomes the OC in New England, does that entice you to look at like a Mac Jones or a Jacoby Myers or even a, Ramondre Stevenson a little bit more, bringing them up a tier with him as the OC?
I would say yes for Jakob Myers and yes for Ramondre Stevenson. No for Mac Jones because I'm afraid that it'll end up imploding. But we all know that Cliff Kingsbury loves to use the slot wide receiver up until they end up murdering him and he gets, extremely hurt. So outside of Jakob Myers, who I think will be undervalued just like he is almost every year, similar like a la Woods, Robert Woods essentially. I just think that we could end up seeing a slight uptick in volume. And then Ramondre Stevenson, we all know Cliff Kingsbury loves to use a single running back like James Conner.
All right, Jacob, real quick.
Running back too. Yeah, it'd be up for everybody for me. I don't think that Cliff Kingsbury is a good play caller, of course. A guy who he kind of reminds me of is Mark Trestman in terms of a guy who was not a good offensive play caller, but he called plays in a way that was favorable for fantasy football, just in the sense that they're going to be up tempo, they're going to be passing a lot, they're going to be throwing quick a lot, so they're going to be racking up these PPR points. And I don't think Mark Trestman, of course, is not a good offensive coach. The reason he's not in the NFL any longer. I don't know that Cliff Kingsbury is long for the NFL either. But the way that he calls plays is fantasy friendly. So having him in any offensive staff makes me more interested in those players, in particular players who work in the short areas of the field, pass catching running backs, slot receivers, etc. Those guys can rack up a lot of PPR points with the way that Cliff Kingsbury runs his offense.
Right on. All right, so next on the list, Lovie Smith, fired after 1 year in Houston, 3-13 record. After winning in week 18 and basically on a 2-point conversion and basically throwing the middle finger up at Houston because I think there was conversation. He knew it was happening, helping Chicago get the number 1 overall pick where he once was the head coach. We know Lovie, Lovie was a run first style of coach. What does this mean for Dameon Pierce for your 23 rankings? Is he an RB2? Is he an RB3? He missed the last 4 games, so his stat line was a little, he almost had 1,000 yards and missed 4 games, 220 attempts, 939 yards rushing. We didn't look at him as the pass catching back out of the backfield, but he was, 30 catches on 39 attempts, 165 yards and a TD. So what does it do for Dameon Pierce as far as your 23 projections and going further? Jacob?
It's probably the most important thing to me with Dameon Pierce is he's got to survive the draft and the free agency process. And I think that people always look at it in kind of a binary way. It's like, what are you saying he's going to get replaced? It's like, maybe he's a round 4 running back. I don't think that that's overly likely, but he can get supplemented in a way that takes away some of his volume, right? He had this year, he basically had an entire monopoly over the rushing work. There was nobody else who was ever getting any carries. And, he didn't play on the obvious third downs, but he did play more as the season progressed in some passing situations. And he was okay. He wasn't anything particularly special in passing situations. He just kind of absorbs the occasional football that comes to him. I think with Dameon Pierce, that's really it. right now, I'm not valuing Dameon Pierce as more than a low-end RB2 because I think he's pretty fragile. If we go into next season and the only running backs on the roster are him and Rex Burkhead and whoever else, then he's probably more of a high-end RB2 for me. But I would be on the lookout to see them supplement him with a change of pace back of some sort, whether that's, more of a speed back to come in, take 5 to 8 of the carries every game, whether that's a pass catching back to come in and take a share of the backfield in that way. That's going to affect Dameon Pierce's value a lot. And I don't think that he's immune from that. So that's where I'm at with Pierce. I'm pretty hesitant on him, but he's also just a lot more valuable in the trade market 6-8 weeks ago when I thought he was like a smash sell. Once he got hurt, now it's the off season. I think at this point I'm probably more just neutral on Pierce. I'm not going out and buying him, but I don't know if you can get a first for him anymore. If you can, I would love to sell, but I don't know how much that's available any longer.
Yeah, I sold him in 2 different leagues. Now, me being a huge Gator fan, that's why I drafted him in the draft. But I also looked at it. He's a 4th-round pick, blowing up in his first year. One draft I sold him. I got Najee Harris in a second for 23. And then the other, I got Najee Harris and a 3rd in 23. So I thought I got very good value with Najee being on a down year as well. So Chase, what do you think about Dameon Pierce and his value going forward?
There's a very, very small chance that we see his value increase, like maybe 10% chance we see his value increase from here to the start of the year. However, if you do have him and you can move him for like 1st round pick, take it. If you get to the point where we're like post-draft and there's like issues all around it, like I honestly don't want to move Dameon Pierce at that point up until like mid-season. When we start to see injuries, when we start to see other things. Now, yeah, his whole entire value could end up crashing after halfway through the season because he could be one of those running backs that's injured. But at the same time, there's a very, very small chance that increases from here to the start of the season. So if you're not going to move him right now, just hold on to him for the entire, season up until you have a sell window. And if you end up dying on him, just like with like a James Robinson or something along those lines, then, you played the lottery, you lost. You probably should have sold him in the middle of the season anyways.
I mean, one thing I'd say with these running backs, right, is I think people, things can go up and down, right? There's always a lot of times other windows, right? Look at a running back like a James Conner, for instance. It's like he breaks into the league, he's not worth anything, and then, the Le'Veon Bell hold. Oh my God, he's worth so much. Then Le'Veon Bell moves on. Everybody's, oh my God, James Conner. And then he kind of is pretty pedestrian. He starts losing a lot of his value. He goes to Arizona. First couple of weeks, looks like he's behind Chase Edmonds. He has like no value at all. Then all of a sudden he starts scoring touchdowns. Eventually Chase Edmonds gets injured. He's all of a sudden becomes a superstar workhorse. And then this offseason is like, oh, well, they're probably going to bring in somebody. He doesn't have any value anymore. Then they don't. It's just all him. Then he has a bunch of value. Then it crashes. Or using Benjamin. They cut Benjamin. He has a bunch of value again. Like Leonard Fournette, another example, right? It's like how many times did this value go up and down? It's like it crashed, and then it came back up, and then it crashed again, and then it came back up again, and like so. You mentioned James Robinson, right? It was like, oh my God, we have UDFA hype. Yeah. They drafted Travis Etienne. He's dead. Travis Etienne got hurt. He's alive. He tore his Achilles. He's dead. Travis Etienne's back. He's dead. Oh, Travis Etienne's only playing on 40% snaps. He's alive. Oh, he sucks. Actually, no, he's dead.
And see, I kind of feel the same way about Dameon Pierce. I understand 100% what you guys are saying.
Jacob, that ride was wild, by the way. I almost started putting my hands up, too.
I thought we were on a roller coaster or something, yeah. But, Dameon Pierce for, they brought in, 3 or 4, free agents this year and just kind of, okay, whatever. Benjamin, what was the other guy that they brought in and just like, okay, well, you're no good to either. So Dameon Pierce just kind of kept pushing everybody back. I know we're going to see a whole new coaching staff. We shall see. I still like Dameon Pierce going forward. Just don't know that he's got the value being that 4th round pick.
The only way that he actually sees an increase in value, in my opinion, and this is actually a very likely situation for the Texans, is most of the coaching candidates this year are defensive coordinators. There's like 2-3 offensive coordinators that really have a chance, I think, at getting a head coach job. I probably see maybe 2 of them that actually make it to that level. The other 3 spots are going to be filled by Sean Payton if he moves up, and then the other 2 are going to be minimum 2 is going to be defensive coordinators because there were a lot of defenses that stepped up to a different level this year that exceeded expectations. So if he goes in and he ends up taking one of these defense coordinators with him, and they work on the defense this season, similar like Carolina, I could see an increase in value slightly for that. But honestly, I don't see a big enough change in order to just decide to hold on to him if you can get a first round pick.
It's always hard to tell though with some of these coaches, right? Like Brandon Staley is like a defensive coach, but he like runs his team like an offensive coach. Jim Harbaugh is an offensive coach. He runs his team like a defensive coach.
Well, see, and so the one that I would like to see, and I know they haven't asked for permission yet, but the one I would like to see there in Houston, because the passing defense was pretty good in Houston this year.
Yeah, it was.
So D'Amico Ryans might be a great.
Yeah, he said no. He said.
Oh, did he already say no? Okay. Yeah. All right, so then we'll move on.
They wanted to interview him, and he said, "Yeah, no thanks."
Okay, all right. So I missed that one.
I think they're interviewing all the regulars. I mean, Ben Johnson, Shane Steichen, Jonathan Gannon seem to be the guys who are getting interviews.
Yeah, and like Shane said, right before we came on, I did see the thing that they asked for permission to talk to Sean Payton as well. I also saw a tweet where Sean was talking to his wife, and she said, "We're moving to Texas," and she said Dallas, right? And he just stood there and. It was like, right. But so anyway, that's when I saw that. Offensive coordinator Scott Turner and Washington have parted ways. Looked like there was some issues between Ron Rivera and the wanting to run that power run game.
There's a lot of issues with Ron Rivera, man.
And Turner wanting to run the vertical passing game. But
Washington might be the only team that I'm glad I'm not a fan. Like, I hate life as a Colts fan right now. They're a joke organization. I think Washington's the only team that I wouldn't trade places with. But
Ron Rivera
that press conference today was insane.
Ron Rivera and Scott Turner have been together for 7 years. I mean, it's crazy that now all of a sudden they're having an issue with the way they want to run the offense and stuff. But
wait, I missed that, Jacob, I missed that. I've been busy as hell.
I meant yesterday's press conference. They didn't have one today. Have you read through some of the greatest hits from yesterday's press conference?
No, go ahead. Hit us with that.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, they asked Martin Mayhew about Carson Wentz, and he said that the reason why it didn't work was because Brian Robinson wasn't healthy at the beginning of the year. And so when they had Carson Wentz playing, they had to pass the ball 2 times for every 1 time that they ran it. And what they wanted to do was run the ball 2 times for every time that they passed it, but they couldn't do that without Brian Robinson. And so they want to have a 2-to-1 run to pass ratio. That's their mandate in terms of how they want to win games.
Well, that's Ron Rivera. Yeah, he's a run guy. Yeah.
They asked Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew whether their run first desires are dictated by their lack of quarterback continuity or are philosophical. And I mean, it was like playing like football guy bingo. Like Ron Rivera was, he's like a big part of it. You got to help your defense. You got to control the tempo. That's what we need to do to win football games. I do believe in a 2-back system. I do believe in a run-first system. We've got to be able to use them. Martin Mayhew was like back in 2014 when I had success. We were a run-first football team. When Ron Rivera played in Chicago, they were a run-first football team in like the 80s. He was bringing up the 80s. He was like, when I played in Washington in like, I don't know, the 70s, whatever it was, or wherever Martin Mayhew played, I forget. They were bringing up, we were a run-first football team. Physicality. It was really a rough one. So they want to establish the ever-loving shit out of that thing in Washington this year.
And so that leads me to the question, with Turner out, is this to me? It's good news for Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, right?
So definitely Brian Robinson. I mean, they want to give that guy like 30. They might give him 35 snaps a game, and on 32 of them, he'll get a carry.
And he'll also average 2.1 yards per carry the entire time. He's not good at football.
Brian Robinson? You don't think Brian Robinson is good at football?
No, he's fodder. He's okay. Like he's not.
I mean, here's what I'll say for Brian Robinson, man. Like, I don't think that he's great, but like he just does not get the same assignment that most of these other running backs get, right? Like he is playing running back on like the hardest of difficulties because all they're doing is they're just running him up the middle repeatedly. Like they're not giving him anything interesting. And also
that's because he can't do anything interesting.
Well, that's fair. And also they're so obvious in terms of their deployment because like he doesn't run routes. Like so every time that he's on the field, it's a running play. And then they pull him off the field when they want to do a passing play. So they're like, all right, guys, we got Brian Robinson in the game. We're going to run power O. And then he like runs power O and he gets 3 yards. It's like, of course he gets 3 yards because he has every single run he takes is like a low efficiency run on first down when they're announcing to the defense exactly what they're going to do.
I was just going to say, so
And
as soon as you see Brian Robinson, come on the field, you know it's a running play. And when he leaves, you know it's automatically a pass.
Part of the issue with that is that Brian Robinson can't run outside because he's a fucking slow. And then he can't really catch the ball. So all he can do is what they're asking him to do. It's just that there's no point in that's just not an efficient. So it's not that he's bad at what he's being asked to do. It's that what he's doing is useless. And running your offense through him is useless.
It's counterproductive. It's counterintuitive for today's NFL. It's literally ridiculous because it'd be different if you had like a talent like Derrick Henry and you could do that and you could break tackles. But Brian Robinson can't even do that. The thing here, right? The coach here that makes a lot of sense that nobody's talking about that could actually do it if they decide to go out and pay money.
Cliff Kingsbury?
No, and it sucks. And I can't believe I'm gonna hate saying this is Deuce Staley. Deuce Staley actually makes a ton of sense here. He's not an offensive coordinator. He's been trying to get an offensive coordinator position. Right now, he's assistant head coach / running backs coach. But he wants to get into play calling. He has been trying to for years. And
are you saying this because you watched him on Hard Knocks and now you're just in love with him?
No,
this is the only circumstance way that I would buy DeAndre Swift in Dynasty is if Deuce Staley leaves.
Really?
Because he hates him.
Oh yeah. So I haven't watched Hard Knocks, so I don't even know. But I've been a huge Deuce Staley fan because everywhere he goes, he makes the running backs better. Like we just saw Jamal Williams break the record for most touchdowns by a Lions running back over Barry Sanders. Like anywhere the Deuce Staley touches in terms of like running backs, he turns to gold. And we've seen that year after year after year. They created a drill at the combine called the Deuce Staley drill because what he does is so effective in terms of training and it's actually effective for the running back position. It's not just a cool drill that we can find a cool metrics with. It's actually an effective drill that you need to have as a running back. So it's interesting to see Deuce Staley not have an offensive coordinator position, and he voices frustration with Philadelphia and left Philadelphia when that happened. And then he goes in and he has success. I mean, DeAndre Swift, albeit Deuce Staley hated him, he still was efficient in most cases. Yeah. Jamal Williams, like I said, just set the record for rushing touchdowns. So if Washington has a chance to get Deuce Staley in the building, which I don't know if they will or not, I think that makes for an interesting offensive hiring or offensive coordinator position that I would love. And I haven't seen anybody even bring it up yet. It was just something I was like, okay, they're going to want to run the ball because that's what Ron Rivera does. And he wants to be tough. And he wants to be physical. And that's how Deuce Staley is. And that's the type of running back Deuce Staley wants, by the way.
That's a perfect fit, though. That's a perfect fit.
If this is what they're going to do, they need to go all in with it and try to be as effective as they can be, for sure. I mean, it's... my Antonio Gibson... I'll say this about... Oh, sorry.
No. Go. I was just going to say, if he lands there, I'll buy Brian Robinson to an extent.
Right. I was just going to say, like, I think both of these running backs are actually totally fine priced. Like, my most recent Dynasty startup, both these guys went in round 13. And that's fine. I mean, I think that they have what they need at the running back position. I don't envision them spending a whole lot of assets at the running back position this year. I think that they're fine with Robinson and with Gibson. And I think Antonio Gibson, in many ways, is actually finally a little bit undervalued. Like I was really interested in him as a rookie. I loved what he did in the rookie season. I was excited for him going into year 2. It didn't happen. And he kind of retained his value, in my opinion, too long. And we were able to get out of him before the Brian Robinson situation happened. At this point, he's been punished, I think, severely enough at this point with Antonio Gibson. And he's now at this point where, all that progression that we were hoping we'd see from him one day is no longer priced in at all, right? Now he's being priced like he's like a situational timeshare back, which he probably is, but he still is that with a really interesting mix of size, speed, pass catching ability. Like at this point, he's kind of like, to me, is now kind of priced like these Leonard Fournette, James Conner types that we've seen in previous years, where it's like, okay, there's this guy. We don't really know what his role is going to be. He's probably going to need to get lucky somehow, but he has kind of all the component parts that you need to get a fantasy running back, right? Whether that's a new coach coming in and using him more, whether that's Brian Robinson just getting injured. But like, you look at what the differences between these two running backs. Antonio Gibson gets hurt. J.D. McKissick gets hurt. Whoever gets hurt, Brian Robinson's role is the exact fucking same. Like, he doesn't play on any of the pass catching running back. He's just going to play his running snaps, and that's it. He's going to sub out on second and long, third down when they're behind. Brian Robinson gets hurt or for some reason falls out of favor, Antonio Gibson has a much higher usage ceiling. He can actually play on all the downs. And so that's more interesting to me as a profile to target, even though probably in most cases, Brian Robinson outscores him.
So I do want to bring up, sorry to interrupt, I do want to bring up the Curtis Samuel. If he's cut this year, they'll see $7 million in dead cap, but they save $16 million. So,
and I wanted to ask this. I wanted to ask this question as well. With like you were just saying, the whole Carson Wentz seems to be falling out of favor as well. Sam Howell looked pretty damn good in the playoff game the other day, with his first rushing touchdown and passing touchdown. So if they were to move on from, Carson Wentz and let Sam Howell take over the reins, being that he, Ron Rivera wants to be that run first, like you said, Jacob, earlier, 2-to-1 rushing to pass. You have the Brian Robinson, you have the Gibson, you have Sam Howell, who would then be basically the quarterback to start. And then what does this do to like a Terry McLaurin? If they go ahead and move on from Samuel, what kind of money are we looking at? What are we looking at fantasy value wise for like a Terry McLaurin? Are you trading him now? Or are you trying to hold on to him?
So I traded Terry McLaurin for the 112 in one league, and then I went and paid 2024 second in another league, probably mid-round 2024 second in another league. So like I'm acquiring him in some, and then I'm moving him in others. It just depends on what I'm going to get back and what I have as depth. If I'm somebody that has like, if he's my flex guy, or if he's, my first bench spot, I'm probably not going to move him for a draft pick that may or may not hit if I'm a competing team. But if I'm rebuilding or something along those lines, I'm trying to move him for immediate draft pick results or a mid-round first in 2024, because there are wide receivers that can end up making up for that production.
Yeah, so you moved off of him for the 112 and bought him for a 24 first.
24 second.
24 second. Okay. I like those.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of Terry McLaurin just because he's been kind of a wide receiver too for the last
DJ
while.
Moore. Does he not?
Yeah, I mean, DJ Moore is flashed to me at least a higher potential in like peripheral stats, but whatever. At this point, they're functionally the same dude. Yeah, I think that the time where you're getting a haul off of the perceived real life talent of Terry McLaurin is long since passed. So at this point, I'm probably more open to acquiring him than I've been in recent seasons. Yeah, ultimately it just comes down to the cost. I mean, if we're talking like a late first, I'd rather just take a shot on a rookie who I think has a much more realistic chance of just massively increasing in value. At this point, the odds are so stacked against Terry McLaurin having a massive blow up season, and he's not young anymore either. So you're not really going to ever have that opportunity to have the big production season, him still be young, sell him for a ton. Like at this point, he's only worth what his production is really going to be. And his production is ultimately not going to be particularly great in my opinion, because they're probably one of the least hopeful positions to get a significant quarterback upgrade of any team. Unfortunately, they don't have the extra, they don't have the extra picks. They don't have extra draft picks. They aren't picking early in the draft. They're behind all the, like they're well behind Indy. They're even behind Carolina. They're behind Atlanta. It's just not a good situation to be in. So I'm not really sure for Washington what the plan is, right? It's not Wentz. Are they going to bring back Heineke? Are they going to try Sam Howell?
Well, Heineke is a free agent this year, if I'm not mistaken. So
right, but they can bring him back. I mean, then I don't know. Otherwise, they're like, it's like, is this going to be the team that trades for Ryan Tannehill? Is this going to be the team that signs Derek Carr or Jimmy Garoppolo? I mean, I'm sure they're going to be in all of these types of conversations, but like to me, your absolute best case scenario is you're getting like a Carr or a Tannehill, and I don't even think they're the most likely team to do that. And then I think the more likely scenario is you're just rolling with like some cruddy, useless bridge quarterback. Like it wouldn't like
they do every single year.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if they literally just re-sign Taylor Heineke, keep Sam Howell. Heineke's the week one starter, and maybe they turn over to Howell if things don't go well. And if not Heineke, it's gonna be some Heineke adjacent player. Like it's not going to be anything interesting. So
yeah, Huskers is saying that Sam Howell ain't taking anything over, but we shall see. I mean, I thought he played pretty decent.
I don't know.
He did, but it also hurts. Like Sam Howell somewhat hurts Terry McLaurin because he likes to take the shots downfield, and that's great. But he also likes to run the ball, right? So you're seeing a guy that's probably going to carry on, maybe 10 to 12% of his
Yeah.
dropbacks, which is about equal with Taylor Heineke, but not as much as Carson Wentz. So like you're not going to see an increase in value for that. So now you're taking, and they're also not going to pass a lot. So you're talking about 25 attempts per game. He's going to end up only passing, or I'm sorry, 25 dropbacks per game. He's probably going to end up passing on 20 of those, maybe 22 of those, and that's just not enough to.
Yeah,
to
well, the
move
way
needle.
the way they treated the season for Sam Howell, though, seemed like he may have only had like 30 plays total that he could run. Maybe not even that many. But moving on to Tennessee.
Also, the thing is, you got to remember Sam Howell. Look, if it was me, I was airlifted in to run the Washington Commanders. I would just start Sam Howell because you're not going to get an actually good quarterback anyway.
No.
So I'd be like, let's just start this fucking guy. Maybe 1 in 10 shot, he's actually legit. And if he's not, he'll help us tank. But Ron Rivera's on notice, man. I mean, him and Mayhew are absolutely goners if they don't make the playoffs next year. So you can bet your ass that they will be protecting themselves with some crappy veteran guy who they think can hand the ball off enough and not throw interceptions so they can get to 9-8. Like, that's all they're trying to do.
And they're going to have new ownership. And they're going to have new
still...
ownership who's going to have the whole entire organization on notice because they're going to want to move on to a younger organization in 2024.
Yeah, Tannehill's still under contract, I believe, for at least next year. So
he'll get cut, I think.
I should just fire Ron Rivera and be done with it. Like, what are we doing here?
I know.
But speaking of Tennessee, they fired a few offensive coaches, most notably the offensive coordinator, Tom Downing, offensive line coach, Keith Carter. Downing was promoted to OC right after Arthur Smith left for Atlanta for the head coaching job in Atlanta. When Arthur Smith left, Tennessee was the number 2 ranked offense.
Right.
Okay. Last year they were 17. This year they were 30. They also need to bring in an OC that is wanting to move the ball. The quote that came out of Tennessee, Vrabel says, "I want to be physical." Well, you've got Derrick Henry, and he still doesn't feel like he's physical enough. So with Todd Downing gone, is there any reason to trust Malik Willis going into 23?
Well, I don't think
can you roster Malik Willis?
Game. You can roster him. I mean, I would definitely roster Malik Willis, like for sure. But I would be absolutely flabbergasted if that's their week 1 starter. I mean,
okay, so then let's go back. Let's go back to a
NFL.
conversation we were just having. We all think that Tennessee is going to cut Tannehill.
No, I do not. I think Tannehill will be their week 1 starter.
Okay.
I think Tannehill will be their week 1 starter because I think that Mike Vrabel is not particularly interested in a rebuild, first of all. And second of all, if he was, how? Like, again, this team is picking in the middle of the first round. There's a lot of teams who have easier paths to a quarterback than they do, who need one. And if you're subbing out Tannehill, what are you doing if you're not able to make a massive trade? Like, okay, the scenarios where I could see Tannehill going.
They're actually picking
11.
They're actually picking 11th.
They still have like an Anthony.
But 11, I mean, okay, so all right, so here's what I think that you can do at 11, right? To me, you're not in the Stroud Young sweepstakes at that point. Houston's going to take one of them at 2, and either the Colts are going to take one at 4, or somebody's going to trade up to 1 or 3. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that you're getting 2 quarterbacks taken by 4. To me, almost certainly. And is Tennessee going to be able to trade up to 1 or 3 ahead of the Colts? Like ahead of the Panthers, the Falcons, any other team might be interested? That's unlikely to me. I think that what you're looking at with Tennessee is, I think, a choice between, okay, we could just keep Tannehill and do nothing else, the quarterback position. We could keep Tannehill and maybe we try to keep developing Malik. We could keep Tannehill and for 1 more year, but actually draft, like a guy at 11. I think it's conceivable at 11 they could get Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. But are they going to want to start that guy week 1? To me, no. To me, they do what the 49ers did a couple of years ago. They keep Tannehill. They draft the guy at 11. And then they let Tannehill start the year. And for as long as they're in playoff contention, they let Tannehill continue to ride out the year. And if they drop out of it, then they turn it over to the rookie. Or the other option that would not shock me is if they try to make a run at Rodgers or Tom Brady. In particular, Tom Brady, because Ryan Tannehill or Mike Vrabel, of course, his relationship with Tom Brady. Wouldn't surprise me if they made a run at him. That would be the scenario to me where they move on from Tannehill. I don't see the point in moving on from Tannehill to start like Malik Willis, or I mean,
I've heard links of Rodgers. I haven't heard
it would
any
make
links
sense to me.
of I haven't heard anything with Tom Brady. Well, Chase, where are you valuing Malik Willis? And then I want you to also answer like Treylon Burks. Where are you evaluating these two rookies from this past year with what's going on in Tennessee?
Well, so I do want to bring up real quick, like the coaching or the salary cap situation with Tennessee, which I think we're going to talk a little bit more about in the upcoming weeks, as to like, hey, what could actually happen with these guys once we get a better idea of how they're going to restructure contracts, etc. But Tannehill, they could save $18 million just cutting them, right off the bat, and they're negative $25 million now. They could also save money by cutting Robert Woods. They could save money by he's gone. They could also save money by cutting that interior linebacker, Zach Cunningham. But a lot of their guys that are locked in outside of that are like locked into their contracts for the most part. You're not going to be able to restructure because they restructured last year. And you need the cap space. So if they end up going with like a Josh Dobbs, who performed well enough, I think, to be able to warrant somewhat of a starting job, like this roster is so talent depleted all the way across because of that GM. And yet Vrabel has overachieved year after year after year with a completely talent depleted roster. I'm so glad they got a new GM, right? They fired their old GM. They got a new GM.
Well, they haven't hired a new one yet, but they did fire the old one, and the new one is coming in soon.
It's crazy. I think that we could end up seeing them take a year to rebuild because it hasn't affected them previously of not having talent.
I mean, the issue is
because they've always had Derrick Henry.
And they're still going to have Derrick Henry, and they're still going to run the ball.
Right, but that's always been their fallback, and that's been, I think, some of the issue with Tennessee when it comes to that. So,
I mean, I think they also fundamentally misunderstood what made their offense good. I think that, like, Derrick Henry was a component of that, but you look at those years with Arthur Smith when they were super efficient, it was a mix. It was Derrick Henry was great running the ball, but their passing game was also extremely efficient, and it was playing off play action. And a part of that was what Henry was able to do. A part of that was how they were scheming their passing game, and a big part of that was the guy who used to wear 11, over there in that uniform. You look at what happened in the last 2 years. Obviously, no AJ Brown this year. The previous year, he was injured for about half of it, and they stopped, relying on play action as often. And so they kept the Henry rushing aspect, but everything else that they built off of that, really evaporated from their offense. And their offense just became Henry. That's the other question to me, I guess, that I'd have for this team is I think it makes sense to do a full rebuild. But I think that this team in general has overestimated exactly how much Henry is worth to them in a real football sense. And I guess my question is, are they going to keep year 29 of Derrick Henry in a complete rebuild year? Because what are we doing at that point with like, I
think Vrabel's job is safe. I feel like Vrabel's job is safe for at least another 2 years, right? So if they decide to move on from Derrick Henry, who would want him? Who would pay for him? Who would pay that price for him? And would they eat the dead cap space, on top of that? So there's a lot. This is a loaded question. In terms of Treylon Burks, I want to think that they're going to bring in somebody more efficient, but I like Treylon Burks. He's still my rookie 101 for this past draft class, and I'm going to stick with him.
Well, see, and I like where you were leaning there. If they decide to, I don't know if it would be go full rebuild or if it would be like 3/4 of a rebuild. But if they go ahead and move on from Derrick Henry, grab a little bit of draft capital, and instead and go ahead and cut Tannehill, collect that $18 million. What about somebody like Jacoby Brissett walking in the door, or like you said, Josh Dobbs?
I'd rather have Dobbs.
Okay. I did like what Josh Dobbs did, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I guess my question is so Tannehill, I mean, the cost is 26, but the savings is 18, right? So that's the critical number. So the question is, like, if you're bringing in another quarterback to be a bridge quarterback instead of Ryan Tannehill, how much are you actually saving? Like, okay, could you bring Jacoby Brissett in for 10? That's a savings of 8. That's something. But like, if you're going to bring in another quarterback, cutting Tannehill to go get Derek Carr is pointless.
Well, you don't cut Tannehill to get Derek Carr. You cut Tannehill to play Josh Dobbs to rebuild your entire team and to bring in free agents at key positions you're going to have an advantageous move for 2024.
Yeah, the reason I brought up Brissett is because he knows he's a bridge quarterback. He knows how to
bridge at.
Yeah, he knows how to, bring a rookie or at least kind of teach. That's where I was thinking there.
That guy's in that division next year. If I could bet Jacoby Brissett as
Carolina?
the week 1 starter.
Oh, you were saying Colts. All right. Well,
I think they'll bring him back to bridge whoever they draft.
So we had a few coaches get the axe during the season. Real quick, Nathaniel Hackett. Can the Denver offensive can they ever meet the expectations we had for them when they traded for Russell Wilson's? Is that ever going to be a true offense? I mean, it looked pretty good the last 2 weeks without Hackett around. Jacob, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm interested in this offense. I think, Russell Wilson did not play well this year by any stretch, but it's still striking to me. You watched that game against the Chargers. I mean, he had back-to-back plays, right, where he throws an absolute dart 51 yards down the field, and on the next play, he's running around like he's, back in 2015. Like, he's physically fine, right? Like, he is not in a state of mass physical decline. He might have lost a little bit of his escapability, but the guy can still move in the pocket quite well. We saw him on it was a quarterback keeper option touchdown that he ran against the Chiefs for 16 yards. Like, he's still highly mobile, and the arm is still very, very live. So I still think Russ has it physically. He was clearly struggling in terms of his ability to read the field. And I think a lot of that's his understanding of the scheme, I suppose. I think he needs to get back to a scheme that's doing what he's good at. We'll see what they end up doing in Denver. But I'm definitely interested in buying into this offense. I'm interested in buying into Jerry Jeudy, who had a quietly pretty impressive season despite being trapped in a terrible spot. I'll say this with Denver that's interesting. Greg Dulcich is a very unique player in terms of his deployment, right? So he's a tight end that basically only plays in 11 personnel, and he's a tight end that generally is generally deployed off the line of scrimmage. And if you have an offense that's built around that type of tight end, that's fantastic. That's exactly what you want, is a guy running 80% of the routes, a guy who's often deployed off the line of scrimmage, a guy who's getting downfield looks. That's incredible, right? But we can see a decent corollary in terms of how that goes poorly at the tight end position when you have a coach who doesn't want to scheme around that type of player. Look at Mike Gesicki, right? Kind of a similar player in terms of how he used to be deployed. So that's a guy where I think you really need a coach who wants to use a tight end in that fashion. That's a guy that, depending on who they bring in, is either a guy I'm going to be really excited to buy or really, really anxious to sell, because I think another coach could come into that spot, and if they want their tight end to play on the line of scrimmage, if they don't want to be shuffling their tight ends out by 12 personnel and 11 personnel as much, they might look at Albert Okwuegbunam. They don't have the same beef that Nathaniel Hackett seemingly had with him, and say, yeah, this guy might actually be a better fit as a universal inline tight end than Dulcich, who's more of a unique off-the-line type player. So that's the position that I'm going to be looking at a lot with regard to who they hire as the next coach.
Jacob, that's actually really, really funny you brought that up, because like their whole list of people they're interviewing are all pretty much defensive coordinators, right? And I think that Dan Quinn actually has a really great shot at landing this job.
I think so too.
I think that he's probably like my top guy. I think that D'Amico Ryans has an okay shot. I think they're gonna. What's up?
I think Harbaugh potentially.
Harbaugh, I don't really love Harbaugh for this, but like I could see it happening. If Harbaugh lands here, then my coach does not. But the offensive coordinator, I think that they actually target is Darrell Bevell, who was extremely, extremely efficient with Russell Wilson in the passing game. And he didn't even want to run the ball. Like, remember Pete Carroll's like, we need to run the ball more. And then they brought in like Schottenheimer, I think, after that, because Darrell Bevell would not pass the ball more. But Russell Wilson had his largest adjusted yards per attempt, I believe, with Darrell Bevell. Like, their offense was just clicking, and they didn't have any great wide receivers at the time. It was just extreme efficiency, because that's what Darrell Bevell does. Right now, he's the passing game coordinator, and I think maybe the quarterback's coach or something like that for the Miami Dolphins, which, by the way, we've seen an extreme level of success with. Everywhere he goes, we see an extreme level of success. But because he ends up getting hired by these like losing teams, these losing head coaches, he ends up having to always find new jobs, and it's just kind of funny.
And he also constantly ends up as the interim head coach.
Yeah, it's so.
I think that guy's been interim head coach more than anyone in existence.
Whoever the next head coach is in Denver needs to go back to what is it, the 2016, 2017, 2018 Seattle and go, okay, who were the coaches that actually made this, Russell Wilson an actual thing, So, but
2016 and 2017 was Bevel.
That's exactly. That's what
was there from 2011 all the way to 2017.
He raised Russell Wilson.
What I was trying
Seattle, and he has a lot of success with Stafford as well. That one season when
tremendous
Stafford played awesome for half the year, then got hurt. That was under Bevel.
What I was trying to do there, Jacob, was give Chase credit without saying, Chase, great call.
I see.
Right. So
great
I was
call,
just
Chase.
like, great call, Chase. Great call.
I mean, he's like, I love Darrell Bevel. I've always loved him as an offensive coordinator within a certain role. And I think that Russell Wilson fits that role. So I think whatever defense coordinator ends up becoming the head coach of the Broncos, because I think that's the way he's going to go. I'm hoping, by the way, it's not Sean Payton. I'm hoping that it's not John Harbaugh, because I don't think either one of those guys will bring in Darrell Bevel. I think it'll be a guy that is a newer head coach or somebody that only had a couple years, like a Dan Quinn. I hope that they bring in a guy like Darrell Bevel to bring back the success that Russell Wilson saw. And he's in a tremendous position because right now he doesn't have a significant role with Miami, yet he's helped make Miami dynamic and successful.
No, if it's Harbaugh, that he's bringing in Greg Roman. So Matt Rule was canned after a 1-4 start.
Please, Baltimore, can we fire fucking Greg Roman, man? I can't do it anymore.
Just an absolute dumpster fire. Then Steve Wilks comes in. He goes 6-6, and they just missed the playoffs. Is there any Carolina player other than DJ Moore, and even possibly DJ Moore at this point, because he seems to be a middling, wide receiver 2, possibly a wide receiver 3 at times, with all the hype that we gave him as an industry, thinking he was going to be the next coming. Is there any player on the Carolina team that you were just like, I've got to have that particular player as it sits right now?
It depends on who they hire, and it would be DJ Moore is the guy that I have interest in because he's the only guy to me that's like a really extremely talented player on the offense. But at this point, it really depends on who they hire because the time for look, DJ Moore is good, and eventually they'll figure it out. Like, unfortunately, that's a few years ago. He's going to be 20. He's going to turn 27 at some point next year, which is incredible. It still feels like he's 21 to me. I would love it so much if Ben Johnson found his way to Carolina and used DJ Moore in a similar deployment to Amon-Ra St. Brown, where they're moving them all around the formation. They're getting them the ball in space. They're using them on end arounds. I mean, to me, that's where we actually see the DJ Moore blow up season, where he actually has a lot of he has a similar build to Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has a lot of the similar traits to Amon-Ra St. Brown, except that he's even a more explosive, faster player. I would be so excited to see what they could do building an offense around him with Ben Johnson. The darkest timeline for fantasy is Steve Wilks, because Steve Wilks is like Ron Rivera Southeast. I mean, that guy wants to establish the run so hard.
Yeah, but the team loved him. The team loved
I'm sure
Steve
he's
Wilks.
a great guy, and he might not even be a horrible coach, but I'm talking, if you want fantasy production out of the offense, like, they literally ran the Washington offense. Like, Deontay Foreman was the Brian Robinson, and Chuba Hubbard was the Antonio Gibson, and DJ Moore was the sad Terry McLaurin in the corner, who occasionally got involved on a game-to-game basis. Like, it's just, you don't want, if you're investing in this offense for fantasy, Steve Wilks is not helpful because they're going to be establishing, they're going to play slow, they're going to keep pounding. If you want it to be, Ben Johnson to me is the ideal fit for DJ Moore's skill set, but like any offensive coach, from a strictly fantasy perspective, I think brings in a little bit more hope than Steve Wilks if you're hoping for DJ Moore resurgence.
So, I was sitting there and I was talking about the Broncos, like, coaches, right? And seeing like these defensive coordinators. And I'm like, oh, this is a pretty good list. It's defensive coordinators. So there's some offensive guys they can possibly pair them with to make it work. Overall, it's kind of underwhelming, but I expected that. When we started the show, I talked about how there's not a lot of offensive coordinators that are going to get head coaching jobs. At least the list for the Denver Broncos with these defensive coordinators was decent. And then I go and I look at the list for the Carolina Panthers and who they have lined up interviews with. Jim Caldwell. Okay, cool. Mike Kafka. Still a little young, whatever. Kellen Moore, uninspiring. Frank Wright, uninspiring. Shane Steichen
Can we
Thank
get
you.
can we get
Like-
Shane is the worst as part of that group?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
let's do that.
It is so uninspiring. Like the head coaching or the head coach candidates that the Carolina Panthers have lined up compared to every other organization outside of the Cardinals.
They're
Because
just-
the Cardinals
they're just
haven't
interviewing more
announced
of
their
them.
stuff.
They've brought in like 10 guys.
Well, it's Carolina. They've got nothing to play with.
But they have the
you don't
top.
even have.
They probably have most likely they have the top position to land in because they got a new owner, right? That'll end up spending a ton of money. They
Well,
have
and
draft
that's-
picks.
and
they
that's why
have
I-
everything.
That's why I think if Harbaugh is going to leave Michigan, that's where he lands.
I don't think that they want. I don't know. I think, are they going to hire another college coach after the Matt Rule thing? That doesn't seem like.
Well,
a
I
fit
mean,
to me.
okay, you call him a college coach. He's already done it in the NFL. He took Colin Kaepernick to, Colin Kaepernick and him went to a Super Bowl. So he's done it in the NFL. So that's my
guess-
argument for that.
That's fair, and I mean, I'd rather hire Harbaugh than Rule. I guess my issue with Harbaugh, like they seem almost similar, like from a vibe perspective. Like Harbaugh's so fucking corny. Like it's just like his like vibe of like we're mighty men. Like I don't know. I'm just not sure that I can like. Is that
So
what Carolina? Like I think Carolina wants to go in a different direction. Like you see all these coaches that they're bringing in, with the exception of Frank Reich, for the most part, it seems to be they're targeting young, progressive, offensive mind. I mean, aren't we all? But like
Carolina didn't even call Harbaugh. Harbaugh called Carolina.
Yeah, you don't
Right,
like the idea of John of Harbaugh
I don't like
going
the idea of
in.
Harbaugh at all.
No, right. You don't like the idea of Harbaugh and Sam Darnold going hanging out in a treehouse somewhere and
No.
talking over football.
I
You
like
don't like that.
the idea.
Okay.
I mean, I think that what Carolina has going for it is I think that they're based on their interview list. I think they want to hire an offensive mind, a progressive offensive mind. And the nice thing is that they can look at their defense and say the defense is ready made, right? They already have a lot of young studs on their defense, J.C. Horn and Brian Burns. Like they have something put together there. The offense is a fucking mess. But like to me, they're going to draft, whether it's via trade up or whether it's via sticking and picking. Like one of C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, or Anthony Richardson will be a Carolina Panther in 2023. And I think they're looking for the guy who's going to develop that quarterback. Maybe that's Harbaugh, maybe it's Ben Johnson, maybe it's Mike Kafka, maybe it's Shane Steichen. But to me, why they're casting such a wide net, that's their focus. And I think with Steve Wilkes, he did a really admirable job this year in getting the most possible out of what was a meager assortment of offensive ability. But I just don't know that they view him as what's right for the next version of the Panthers that they want. And I think that their coach desperately wants to be able to transcend past a team that is running Deonta Foreman 30 times a game because the quarterback is Sam Darnold. I just don't think that that's what they're looking for.
Right on.
No, they're
All
looking for
right.
a young guy that can coach up a young quarterback. And I think that Ken Dorsey essentially makes a lot of sense here. But I think that Ken Dorsey ends up in Arizona. So
Kellen Mond might be on the move as well.
Kellen Moore, you mean?
Moore.
Kellen Mond is going to coach the Carolina
he's definitely going to be
Panthers.
on the move. Yeah.
I don't think Kellen Moore is a good fit.
Okay.
I don't mind Kellen Moore.
All right. So we get I got two more. Want to run through these pretty quick. We're already pressing that hour right now. This is
Just like Dynasty Intervention always does.
Yeah. Yep. And Shane's not here. He's just going to be complaining left and right. This one here. This is directly directly at you, Jacob. Frank Reich gone earlier this season.
Oh yeah, baby.
Sounds like it doesn't look like Saturday is going to get the job.
If he is, I won't be on the planet any longer.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask Chase this question because I know you're going to get long-winded on me and you're going to be here for our next half hour. With the quarterback issues, the O-line issues, what are the outlooks in your opinion of like a Pittman, Alex Pierce, Campbell? What are they going to do going into the draft as far as, what do they got they've got so many holes to fix. Are any of these wide receivers something you're going to be wanting to gravitate towards, collect as assets? What are you thinking there, Chase?
My biggest concern is that they go with one of these young defensive coordinators, right, as the head coach. They just tried the veteran, essentially. Well, not veteran, I should say, but the head coach that was going to oversee the organization, that was going to end up just managing people, and Frank Reich. And I honestly feel like now it's going to be up to a young, innovative defensive guy that's going to try to fill in the holes. The biggest issue with the Colts this year was offensive line, which was great in previous years, and it just fell apart this year. Their defense was above average, if not very, very good. Their offense was somewhat efficient outside of the quarterback position. But I mean, like Paris Campbell was above expectations. Alec Pierce above expectations. Michael Pittman didn't hit expectations.
Low expectations, bro.
It's not my dude. I don't even want to talk about it, Jacob, because when we started out the season, you said you would never draft Paris Campbell anywhere. You didn't want anything.
Yeah, and he wasn't good.
He was serviceable from week to week.
He was what, like the wide receiver 50?
I took him to 2 different finals and best balls out of like my 6 teams. So yeah, I'll take him.
He was the wide receiver 48.
Yeah, and you said like he shouldn't even belong in like the top 100 wide receivers.
I'm not drafting wide receivers in that range. I'm drafting running backs where some dude might get hurt and they actually do something better than Paris Campbell.
No, I feel like at this point, like, sure, they have holes, and I'm not saying that they don't have holes, but like a lot of those holes were provided because of the offensive line, not because of the positions themselves. So for me, like I said, I think they exceeded expectations for the low expectations that they had at the beginning of the season. I'm not going to say like they're going to be great now, because they're probably going to bring in some experienced older offensive coordinator that has been around the league forever and will help assist a young defensive head coach to get them to the level they need to be on a consistent basis, while Jonathan Taylor runs the shit out of the ball. So I don't really love any of these positions. I'm not going to go out and invest these positions. But when it comes to the draft next year, if Paris Campbell ends up falling to me at wide receiver 48 or whatever it is, I'll take him as a lower end guy that could provide upside, albeit what happens at the quarterback position in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see who they hire. I actually do think this is where Jim Harbaugh winds up. Personally, we'll see. That's what I'm kind of dreading. My ideal hire, I guess,
makes sense.
As a fan of the Colts, my ideal hire for the Colts is essentially who I think will be the best coach. My guy's Ben Johnson personally, that I'm always hoping to get.
You've only put him in like 4 different head coaching jobs tonight.
Well, I think he ends up in Carolina ultimately is where I think he ends up. Well, he's interviewing for literally every head coaching vacancy. So he's under consideration. I think Carolina's where he ends up. I think that's probably his best fit in terms of like for fantasy value. As a fan of the Colts, that's the coach I'm most excited about this cycle. So that's the guy with like my team that I cheer for to hire. But
I love Avero out of Denver. I think that he's a great fit for the.
I'm just against hiring defensive coaches.
He's
I just would never do it.
He's also going and interviewing at a bunch of places as well.
Yeah, and he seems like a great option. I think with the Colts, they are interviewing Ben Johnson. That's my hope, but we'll see. I think flex. Who cares? There's no difference between the wide receiver 36, the wide receiver 90.
I was so waiting for you not to be paying attention to the screen for just a quick second, so I could pop that in there. You look back and be like, "You sons of bitches."
Flex worthy. That term drives me up a tree.
Oh,
what are you, a 6-year-old dad?
Yeah,
it drives me up a tree.
I am. It drives me up a tree. Anyway, the other thing that drives me up a tree is rooting for the Indianapolis Colts. I think that Irsay is just like on tilt, right? Like he's at the poker table. He's had one too many drinks. He's had a few hands go against him that he thought he was going to win on. And he's acting like an out of
when
control.
You say he's had one. You're so kind when you say he's had one too many.
Okay, he's had several too many drinks
and a few pills on the side.
Yeah,
he's 163 prescriptions.
Have you guys seen Molly's Game?
No.
Oh, it's like this movie. It's a poker movie, and there's like a guy who's there, and he's like he hasn't been drinking in a while, and then he starts. And then he like gets like all out of control, and he's like losing every hand. He's like all in, and then he like runs out of money. He's like, I'm good for it. He's like throwing more. That's like the mood that Jim Irsay's in right now. It's a dangerous place. So trying to predict his actions are not easy. The one thing is, I think he wants a big move. Like I think he feels like he needs a win. So I think he's gonna go all out for Harbaugh. We'll see if that works out, but I do think that's probably his number one. And then if that doesn't work out, I kind of think that he wants like a raw type of guy. So I think that D'Amico Ryans is a possibility there. And you mentioned Avero. I think that's a possibility there. And then we'll see what happens with the offensive coordinator. I'm not interested in any of these assets outside of Taylor. Pittman's a good player. He's just like in that Terry McLaurin zone to me, or he's mid to me. He's a wide receiver 2. You know, I don't value wide receiver 2s very highly. Other people like them. They get to know who's in their lineup every week, and that makes them happy. That doesn't make me happy. His 14 points per game.
You're going to.
I don't get a hard on.
Going home to bed tonight.
Yeah, so that's fine. Pierce, whatever, and he's a field stretcher. Campbell, yeah, he's flex worthy. That's a great term for Paris Campbell. It's just a sad franchise, man. The only thing that's fun is that I do think that they are going to be in position to actually get a quarterback of their choice, right? They ended up at the 1-4. It's a great spot because we'll see what the Bears and Cardinals do, but there's a possibility if nobody wants to trade up for Bryce Young, where they just get their second choice of quarterback at the 1-4, right? If things just go naturally. And then I think you're also in the spot where if the Bears want to trade the pick, and there's any sort of bidding war, I mean, the Colts should win that bidding war if they want to. They're the only team that can offer to the Bears, trade back, get assets, and you'll still get Carter or Anderson because you're going to pick 4th, right? We're gonna pick our guy.
Matt Ryan
Houston's going to pick our. Oh yeah, that'll really entice them.
Jesus. All right, so we're gonna move
Christ.
on after the whole
Ryan.
Matt Ryan comment. Chase, I should actually kick Chase out just for that.
And we'll give you Matt Ryan.
Give you Matt Ryan. All right, last but
Matt
not
Ryan
least,
half his salary because we guaranteed it for no fucking reason.
last but not least, Mike LaFleur. Around 6 p.m. this evening, when the report came out, I don't know if it's official, but it's official by Ian Rappaport. The Jets and LaFleur mutually, in quotations, mutually agree. I think this is I think he's becoming the fall guy for Zach Wilson. But we saw the drama of Elijah Moore play out this year. What does it mean at quarterback? You know, can the Jets even put Zach Wilson back on the field? I mean, is that even a possibility? Yeah,
they said it was. They said they're going to work on him all off season. And honestly, I don't think that Zach Wilson's in a bad spot. I mean, this is perfect time to get a new head coach, right? He's seen the failures. He can
offensive coordinator, head coach is staying.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean head coach. Yes. Yeah. New offensive coordinator, kind of like a refresh. He needs a rah guy. Speaking of that, but he also needs a guy that is going to be firm and going to keep an eye on him and going to make sure that, hey, this is my guy. This is my baby boy. This is my baby boy. Nobody touches my baby boy, right? Like, you stay away from him. You stop talking shit to him. Like, you need somebody that's protective. And honestly, I don't know who that guy is that could fit in this system, but there couldn't be a better time for a quarterback to get a new offensive coordinator other than Zach Wilson. Now, it's still going to be a battle, and it's still going to be, it's still going to create questions later, but they definitely need a guy. And I haven't looked that much into it because obviously this was just news a couple hours before the show started, but they need a guy who's going to call shots downfield, but it was also going to keep him protected also from the defense, not only his own team, and provide Elijah Moore with targets and whatnot. I know that I'm going to be acquiring a lot of Elijah Moore this offseason if people are just going to try and dump him, because I'm assuming as we get closer to the draft and as we get closer to the start of the season, Elijah Moore is going to get shit on to an extent. Well, and the hire, but I'm going to be trying to grab Elijah Moore.
Yeah, that's where I was trying to lead with this question is are you going to, at this point in fantasy, go after Elijah Moore? Because with this news coming out, I think it also it gives Garrett Wilson, even though he had 1,000-yard season, I think it gives him a little knockdown as well, because LaFleur was a pretty damn good offensive coordinator there in New York, and I thought he gave a good buffer between Saleh and Zach Wilson, or the other 4 quarterbacks that they played with. Because you got to remember, he had 4 quarterbacks running this system throughout the year.
Yeah, it was rough.
He did a pretty damn good job with 4 different dudes running a system.
He's definitely going to take over at least a quarterback coach, if not a offense coordinator job at some other spot this season, some other team.
Yep. Jacob, what's your take?
Yeah, I think Michael LaFleur did nothing particularly wrong, other than have to deal with horrendous quarterback play.
And lost.
I guess here's the thing, right? If you're Joe Douglas, right, and you're Robert Saleh, and you're whatever collection of individuals who made up the consensus to take Zach Wilson at number 2 overall, right? And you're still out here saying that you want him to be involved in your plans to some extent. It's like, I think it's one thing to go to the ownership and say, hey, clearly we made a mistake with Zach Wilson to some extent. But I think that it's harder to say, yeah, Zach Wilson was a total lemon. We were completely wrong from day one. We never had any, whatever. You have to kind of lay the blame on somebody in terms of how did this thing get so screwed up that this kid can't play at all. And I think that ultimately part of that gets put on Mike LaFleur, where, if you go to the owner and you say, yeah, it wasn't Mike LaFleur's fault, actually, Zach Wilson was just irredeemably terrible. It's like, well, why did you pick him second overall then? Right. So if you're the person who did pick him second overall, you kind of have to blame some of what happened on somebody else. And I think Mike LaFleur was easier to have the hatchet fall on him than the other guys.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Oh my Lord. We've gone over about 15 minutes or so. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this thing up. Guys, it was awesome to get with you guys tonight. Jacob, what do you got going on this offseason?
Man, honestly, we'll see. I'm taking a little bit of time to reassess. For now, at least, you'll find me here. I'll be here every second week for the time being. You will find me on the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast on Tuesdays. We have 2 more weeks of the Big Tilt. Me and Chase doing DFS on Friday. We will have that for you this Friday, of course, for the wild card round. And we will also have that for the divisional round. We're primarily, I think, going to be looking at the 6-game full week slate. And of course, there's all different combinations of slates. Maybe if there's people that have specific questions about those slates, we can address those. But we'll be talking about those fun slates. That'll be another 2 weeks. And then, Sweat and Bullets, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus. I think we're going to come back next week with our season in review type episode. Then we're probably going to go back on hiatus, and then we'll come back, do off-season rookie content within a few weeks for sure. So fun stuff. I'll also probably have my year in review article up on Player Profiler in the next couple of weeks. And then you'll hear from me soon as to what's all in the works.
Right on. And if y'all are doing any DFS out there, Friday nights, man, go check out Player Profiler. Chase and Jacob get on there. They do a hell of a job. Get you guys set up for the week on the slate. Figure out which way they want to go. Definitely, they're always getting the questions in the chat.
Man,
you did.
We were calling out Sam Howell.
Howell was a big one.
We were talking about the Buffalo Patriots game at 58 points.
Yeah,
we're doing a lot of good stuff.
Yep. Chase, what do you got going on this offseason?
Dude, there's so much stuff going on at all times.
Okay, bye, Chase.
One, of course. I'm not even going to dive into it, man. I'm not even going to dive into it. Just make sure if you guys want to go support the show, you guys go over there to trophysmack.com. Use promo code advice. And if you purchase a trophy or a title belt, you get a bling ring or a stunner ring for free. So go check that out over there at trophysmack.com.
Yeah,
promo code advice.
I'm trying to give you a little bit. I know you're so busy, so I'm trying not to, order all of my championship trophies all at one time, all 2 of them. So, guys, I greatly appreciate y'all joining me tonight. Thank you, chat, for letting us intervene with your fantasy life. As Chase would say, we out.